The big Christian narrative comes in three parts: creation, and then the fall of man, and then the redemption of man. Everything in the Bible comes under one of those. To be created in the image of God means that we have the ability to make choices. My point is this, that He created us for a relationship with Him and with each other. Relationships of love require free will. Free will requires choices, and choices can go one way or the other. The whole point of the fall is that humanity decided they can do this without God. We can make our way in this life, in this existence without God. We can decide for ourselves what's right and wrong. We don't need God as a reference point, and history has been trying to make that case, unfortunately not so well. Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. Dan Arsenault here. I have a question. How can Christians believe that God created the universe and at the same time think that something is terribly wrong with the universe that God created? Critics like to take advantage of that as well. I certainly did before I became a believer. Like, how can God make a world like this? You think God made cancer and disease and tornadoes and tsunamis and all this death and destruction in nature itself? That's God? Christians, of course, have I think, the best explanation to explain this. When God created the world, He said it was good, and then He said it was good, and then He said it was good again, and then the very end, He said it was very good. So the point is, this is not exactly the world that God created. After all, we had paradise at the time. And so there's a narrative. The big Christian narrative comes in three parts: creation, and then the fall of man, and then the redemption of man. So that everything in Christianity, everything in the Bible comes under one of those headings. The fall of man, think about this, and I can't expound on this one too much today, but it's about the free will argument. And the free will argument is that when God created us, and yes, we do believe, contra the materialists, that we are special in the sense that we are created in the image of God. Well, to be created in the image of God means that we have the ability to make choices. And that's why God created the universe for us. I think primarily He didn't need the universe. I mean, He enjoys it. He created it for us to live in, not just the world probably ultimately, but my point is this, that He created us for a relationship with Him and with each other. Relationships of love require free will. Free will requires choices, and choices can go one way or the other. And in God's, He knew this already, but it was worth it apparently. That's one of my still questions. Was it worth it? Apparently so. Because here we are, the fall of man is about rejecting God as their Lord, as their God. The idea is we can do this. The whole point of the fall is that humanity decided they can do this without God. We can make our way in this life, in this existence without God. We can decide for ourselves what's right and wrong. We don't need God as a reference point. And history has been trying to make that case, unfortunately not so well. So that's the fall of man. So we have creation, fall, but then you have a promise, the redemption. What's the number one verse that everybody knows, even unbelievers? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's redemption. So God promises that He will restore, replenish, redeem what has been lost. Everything that was lost in the fall, God will restore in His redemption. And the entire Old Testament, starting, should read these. In Genesis chapter 3, right after the fall, Genesis 3:15, God promises that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent, though the serpent will bruise his heel. No Bible teacher, Bible scholar, even unbelievers know this is a prophetic statement. You have the creation of the universe, all's good. We have the fall of man, things go badly. Then you have the promise of God's redeeming the earth, the universe, and everything else that was lost. The Old Testament is a promise that the Redeemer If you have redemption, you have to have a redeemer that will come and restore that. The idea of redemption is buying back something that was lost. The Redeemer is promised, and then it becomes a picture, which we say as theologians, it's a type of Christ, a type of the Redeemer. All through the Old Testament are types of Christ. And those types always entail something that is sacrificing themselves for the benefit of paying the debt so that the redemption is accomplished. And you have tons of examples of that. And then you have pictures, not only pictures, those are the types, then you also have predictions about who that Redeemer will be. We call those prophecies. And so you have pictures and predictions and promises here all about the Redeemer who will finally get us out of this mess. Here's the neat thing. I'm convinced there can be no other Redeemer other than Jesus Christ. And God, in His promises, pictures, and in His predictions, prophecies, it's like a funnel. And if you think of a funnel, it's big in the beginning, and then as it progresses down to what you want to come out of the funnel at the bottom, it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And we're going to show you how that works. And at the bottom, the only possible person that can come out of that funnel of prophecy, predictions, and pictures, types, is Jesus Christ. There can be no other. And God did that in such a way to convince us. I'm convinced. I wasn't before. I'm convinced now, and have been for 52 years now, 53 years maybe. I'm going to show you about the funnel. So it starts that the Redeemer is human, the seed of the woman, Genesis 3:15. The seed of the woman, I think virgin birth there as well, by the way, but the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent, the evil one. When the Redeemer comes and is victorious over evil, he will crush the head of the serpent. But the point is, it has to be human, the seed of the woman. And that makes sense because humanity is what brought the fall in. It is humanity that will bring the fall out. And there's tons of scriptures like that in the Bible. Romans chapter 5 comes to mind. By one man, sin entered in the world, and death by sin. And then one man is going to take us out of that condemnation. That one man, of course, has to be Jesus. So we start with the funnel. Big, it's human. Then it narrows down just a little bit to being Jewish. The Redeemer has to be Jewish. If you're going to have somebody come into the world to redeem the world, he has to come through something or through some place and some people group. God chose the nation of Israel. And that's why so many things happen in the Old Testament concerning Israel. That's why they are His chosen people. What are they chosen for? To bring the Redeemer into the world. And so you have, he has to be human, then he has to be Jewish. Let me show you where that is, by the way. That's in Genesis chapter 12. The plan of redemption that God promised way back in Genesis 3, it actually starts with Abraham. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, who becomes Abraham, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Let me say it again, the last part. In you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Hence, the Redeemer's coming through Israel. It's N.T. Wright, the great scholar, says it's always been God's plan to save the world through Israel. Human, narrow it down a little more. You can learn a lot to Judaism, but there's more than that. Judaism has 12 tribes, and God narrows it down even more in Genesis chapter 49. We won't go there this time, but to the tribe of Judah. So it has to be human. The Redeemer has to be human. It has to be Jewish. He has to, I don't know why I keep saying it, redemption, I guess. But the Redeemer himself has to be Jewish. He has to be from the tribe of Judah. Genesis 49, verse 19, and we won't read it today, but it just simply says that the scepter shall not depart from Judah, it shall be there forever. So it's an eternal promise about the tribe of Judah being the ruler of the world forever and ever and ever. The scepter belongs to Judah. But it gets even narrower than that. Now, we'll give you this one. This is 2 Samuel chapter 7. We're going to start in verse 13, only 2 verses here. Think about this. This is so cool to me. First, it's human. Second, it's Jewish. Third, it's Judah. Fourth, it is of the family in Judah of David, the house of David. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 13 says this, He will build a house for my name. He's talking about the descendants of David. He's talking to David, actually. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Now go to verse 16. Let's start verse 15. But my steadfast love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you, and your house, this is 16, and your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne, David's throne, shall be established forever in accordance with all these words, in accordance with all this vision Nathan spoke to David. Now we have the promise of this funnel, the predictions, the prophecies, that the house of David will be established forever. It's interesting to me. From an archaeological standpoint, a lot of people thought David was not a real person, but archaeology has disproven that there was a house of David that fought wars with the surrounding cultures around him who remarked about the house of David. So there's all kind of evidence that David was the real person, and of course here's the promise that he does. So you have the humanity, Jewishness or the Judaism, the tribe of Judah, and the house of David. Now, we have to narrow it down even more, because now we're talking about the timing. So, okay, you got the house of David. That's pretty narrow. But a lot of people from that stock, from that genealogy here, now you have to talk about the predictions, the prophecies about the timing. Haggai chapter 2. Now, let me give you a little background from this. This is one of the prophets. Unfortunately, the Jewish nation went into idolatry and were exiled. They were driven from the land, which God promised would happen before they ever went into it. And so they were taken captive by Babylon, and the northern kingdom by Assyria in 722 BC, by Babylon in 586 BC. So they're in exile for 70 years. And when they finally get to come back into the land after those 70 years, they start to rebuild what was destroyed by the Babylonians. They start to rebuild the city of Jerusalem and the temple. And when they build the temple, it's nothing. They don't have the facilities, or they don't have the gold. They don't have the trappings for the same temple that Solomon built. And so they're disappointed in it. But God sends them a prophet named Haggai. And here's what Haggai says to them. Haggai chapter 2, verse 6. I'll start in verse 4. He's talking about Zerubbabel, who is the founder of this project here to rebuild the temple. He says, Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, declares the Lord. Be strong, O Joshua, who was the high priest at that time, not the same Joshua we know about. Be strong, O Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Be strong, all you people of the land, declares the Lord. Work for him. Work, for I am with you, declares the Lord of hosts, according to the covenant that I made with you when you came out of Egypt. A long time ago. My spirit remains in your midst, fear not, for thus says the Lord of hosts, yet once more in a little while I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, so that the treasures of all nations shall come in. And I will fill this house, he's talking about the temple there that they're building and disappointed with. I will fill this house with glory, says the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, the gold is mine, declares the Lord of the hosts. The latter glory, that is the glory of the second temple, call it Zerubbabel's temple, which later was remodeled and became Herod's temple. It was the temple where Jesus was. And so what he says here, in this temple, in this house, the latter glory of this house shall be greater than the former, says the Lord. Now watch this, the Lord of hosts. And in this place, in the second temple, I will give peace, declares the Lord of hosts. Now, however God's going to fix this mess, this fallen world, this fallen universe, it's going to be through a human being who is Jewish in the tribe of Judah from the family of David, and it's going to take place during the time of the second temple. Think about this. The second temple was destroyed in 70 AD. That's history, both secular and Jewish history and biblical history. That temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. So whatever had to happen as far as sending the Redeemer here and the glory of the Lord being in that temple and making peace in that temple had to come before 70 AD. Well, who could possibly have been in that temple, the glory of the Lord, before 70 AD? It just so happens Jesus was in there, so it keeps narrowing it down more and more and more. But there's really one more thing. The prophet Daniel, and we don't have, this is a whole episode on itself, but in the prophecy of Daniel, who, by the way, was in Babylon and then Persia, when Persia conquered Babylon, he was praying about this. He was in that 70-year exile period, like Haggai in the same wheelhouse. And he's saying, where is this going to happen? How's this going to happen? God sends him a promise, prophecy, prediction. And here's the bottom line. I'm just going to get cut to the chase in the bottom of it. Here's what Daniel predicts in Daniel chapter 9, if you want to go read it, verse 24. Basically, he says this, 173,880 days after the decree where the Persians, Artaxerxes, allowed the Jews to go back and rebuild the city and rebuild the wall and rebuild the temple. It's 173,880 days after that, the Messiah will come to Jerusalem. And now we're really down at the very bottom of the funnel because you have human, Jewish, Judah, David, Second Temple, April 6th, 30 or 33, depending on which calendar you use, AD. That is the time. This is Palm Sunday. That's when Jesus rode into Jerusalem as a king. And that's the neat thing. He comes in as a king, riding a donkey just like Solomon. That's another prophetic fulfillment. By the way, there are 300 promises or predictions or prophecies about this Messiah. You know, critics want to say, well, those were all manipulated and they had to match this and that and the other to try to make Jesus look like the Messiah. All 300? That seems ludicrous to me. But I think it's critical that all these things, I mean, God is just, it seems like to me, for lack of a better word, God doesn't bend over backwards, but he's bending over backwards to show us it can't be anybody else. If you want a Redeemer, it has to be Jesus. He's narrowed it down that much. So then he comes in like a king in April 30 AD or 33, depending on your calendar. Then he goes to the temple and casts out all the money changers in the temple, acting as if he has the authority of the high priest to do that. So now he's the king, riding in like Solomon. He's the high priest, cleansing the temple. And then he starts speaking like a prophet, and he gives basically the same prophecy as Isaiah has done. To be a king and a prophet and a priest was not allowed in the Old Testament except by one person, the Messiah. Messiah is the anointed one. The Messiah is the Redeemer, the one who will pay for this. And then, of course, after all that, he goes to the cross. And that was what the shocker was, because they didn't understand that the Messiah had to die. Although it's clear that's another prophetic fulfillment from Isaiah chapter 53. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have all gone our own way, and God has laid on him, the Messiah, the Redeemer, the iniquity of us all. It is really, it's impressive beyond words to me that this is true. So it is promised, prophetic, and pictured all the way through the end. Palm Sunday, Jesus coming in like a lion, you might say, and leaving this world as a lamb. I hope this is helpful to you. Thanks for watching.